we're back. Welcome to Print Your Games, the podcast for the 3D printing gaming hobbyists who all enjoy the magic box that makes all the toys we want. I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham. I'm joined by Kristen N. Sowards,
also known as Lost Spheres,
and a very special guest, our first guest on the podcast, Maksym from The Printing Goes Ever On, one of my favorite Patreons to watch. Hey, Maksym.
Hi there.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes. So, Maksym, you are a you help run in the company. You run the company, right? The Printing Goes Ever On, a miniature Patreon, the magical people that give us the files that make the toys come out the printer, right?
That's right. I've been doing this for a year now. It seems it all went really fast.
You're on chapter 16. That means month 16, right?
That means month 16. That's exactly right.
Very cool.
Also, I like that yours are easy to track because every time I see a new release from you all, it's like chapter number and then cool title, and then I know exactly which one it is. Whereas
I dig that book vibe. That is very cool. It's got good energy.
That's exactly the gimmick that I'm really proud about.
All right, so Maksym, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and what the Printing Goes Ever On is.
All right, so maybe from what the Printing Goes Ever On is, it will be easier to segue into me. So the Printing Goes Ever On is a Patreon where we make miniatures, terrain, and monsters, also some D&D stuff like stat blocks, maps, and we are keeping it fairly in a low fantasy theme. I'm actually quite usually inspired by historical themes. For example, I used to do historical reconstruction of early medieval times, so you can possibly see some of that influence in my work. So yeah, we make miniatures mostly, but we also have some other cool stuff like a 3D app for customizing the minis sometimes. So that's also like a big thing in what we do. All right, so about me, I am, well, from my educational side, I finished med school. So, well, that was quite a tough one. However, I kind of lost the feel for it during my studies and sought for some other way of having a life without having to work at a hospital, for example. So that's how it all basically started, with some skills I grabbed on along the way of going to school and making some game mods and similar. And
wow.
Well, now we are here.
So, like, you went to med school. Like, I expected to hear, like, you were, there's two backgrounds for gaming that I found. Either you're super into computers or you're somehow involved in education. And if I talk to most of the people I know in the gaming industry, they go down one of those two paths. And every now and then, an outlier of awesome shows up, like Ron Lundeen, who was a lawyer beforehand, and now a you went to med school. You were a doctor?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
so
incredible.
Like your miniature anatomy must be like on point.
I mean, it does help a little, but you know, the anatomy is mostly about the inside stuff.
True. Still very cool.
It helps to know where some muscles are, not from anatomy books for artists, which focus on the flashy stuff.
So, a med school doctor turned 3D gaming printer company is not a typical path. So, like, were you like a fan of gaming? Or like, what attracted you to decide you were going to become a sculptor?
Well, I always loved minis and the whole idea of minis and painting them, although I'm useless at that. But I live in a country where usually minis aren't that cheap, and we had to work around that with like making them from polymer clay, and they were really hideous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So well, years passed and the printers happened, so things changed drastically, and well, for the first time, actually, it was possible to have at least a skirmish warband for your table without having to spend really lots of money. So that's like one of the main reasons. However, well, actually, the midway between all of this was that I bought a 3D scanner for some medical purposes. I mean, we made some research for plastic surgery, and I bought it from my own money to do that. So I wanted to somehow recuperate for the costs. And during a convention, I scanned people and printed minis out of them, out of the cosplay or just from usual convention goers. But actually, in the process, it turned out that the scans were not that good and they needed some sculpt work. So in between that, it was actually much faster to just sculpt someone than start from the scan. So that's how it basically went down, because then it turned out that printing physical things, especially here in Poland, wasn't that big a deal, and the market became super competitive in a short time. So having like one machine and no possibility to upscale, well, that basically killed the options. So, well, transition to digital was the main option for me.
So, like, did you have an artistic background, or is it like completely self-taught over the last couple of years on your sculpting skill?
Completely self-taught. I made some game mods. I tried at least to make some game mods. I was into game design and making video games for a while, but I never really had all the tenacity to fight through the whole pipeline for character art, like making the topology, textures, UV maps, everything. It was quite a lot. And well, sculpting and making printable stuff is so much simpler and quicker than that.
That's really cool.
For any of our listeners who are curious, the models you see in video games, they may look really cool and detailed and high resolution these days, but they are even now very simplistic actual 3D geometry, and they hide that with like textures and various files. They're basically wearing wallpaper that, like, if you've ever seen somebody walk through like the convention with a t-shirt that made them look like they had Wolverine's six-pack, that's basically what video game characters are doing all the time. And with 3D printing, those video game characters aren't good for 3D printing. You have to try to restore a bunch of detail that was stripped out in the process. So sculpt, it's a slightly different process.
We won't really know what happens with Unreal Engine 5 right now, and the new technology for like millions of polygons on screen at the same time. I mean, this could actually lead to some new situations in character art. So we need to keep a look at that.
Very cool.
So do you have some ambitions for some of your like the current set, these really cool riding rangers, like showing up in an Unreal game someday?
Well, this would require to work on them from the start over again. So I'm not sure, but you never know.
If I ask a question? Yeah. So I'm not currently a member of your Patreon, and there's a lot of Patreons out there. Can you tell us a little bit specifically about your Patreon and like why it would maybe draw in a new customer like me?
Sure. I mean, we can start from the more technical stuff. As you said, there are lots of Patreons out there, and it can be easy to forget to download some files, for example. So first of all, we have a system that integrates with our website. So we have a library on our website that allows you to download stuff whenever you want, and it's updated quickly and without a hassle. It works pretty well. I mean, it's been in the works for a year now, and improvements have been made for that. So that's one thing that is quite a nice bonus in all this if you are subscribed to more than one creator. and don't want to remember about everything. What I think is a key thing in the general art direction is that we're trying to keep things logical. So when something is should be there, like we have goblins that are scavengers, and they live in a dwarven mine. This means they have probably scavenged some stuff for their armor, for example, and for their weapons. So it means that they have representations of those things on them, right? So that's like a really important thing in what we are doing. There's this direction to make things reasonable, and how it would actually happen in such situations. I watched some GDC video from the art director of Horizon Zero Dawn, I think. Yeah, and it's influenced me a lot in terms of thinking about this and how things should actually happen when, I mean, people and characters are in a world and they exist there and interact with their surroundings. So yeah, that's one thing.
Very cool. So kind of just like that narrative flow through to make sure that like things make sense and follow. I like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. What else? I especially I'm not a fan of exaggerated proportions, so I'm keeping it fairly well to the extent that printing can allow us. So not doing super real scale, but real scale adjusted to printability. So there are some a little bigger heads and hands, but otherwise I'm trying to keep it fairly naturalistic and without those huge muscles and huge feet.
Right.
Depends. That's an aesthetic choice. So if you're into that, yeah.
Very cool.
Something I do appreciate is that you do have that like more realistic proportions to your characters, but you've avoided the pitfall that I've seen on a lot of artists that go for that realistic proportions, and then like the spears are like so fragile you look at them when they break in half. You still have like you've had printing in mind from the beginning with this art, and so when I print out like your swords and your spears and your bows, they don't just immediately disintegrate just because they were at a realistic art style.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's because I actually started with printing and not sculpting, and because of that I knew frustration points lie. Because I mean, I still print my models, and this way we can see what happens, but you're absolutely right that we are really trying to keep it usable on the table and not just for views.
Very cool.
You mentioned you had a printer at home. What model is that?
I have an Epax X1 with the LED array upgrade.
I'm unfamiliar with this printer.
Epax, I mean, they are pretty big. I'm from the US, I think.
And you said, was this one of the printers you originally got for medical stuff, or was this something you picked up more recently?
No, actually, never used anything printing for medical stuff because
just the scanning was for medical stuff.
Yeah, anything printing is, and generally doing for medical, the certificates, especially for printed stuff, are terrible and really hard to get.
Gotcha.
I see the thing now. Yes, this is it looks like a fairly nice. I guess it's about Mars size. Yes.
It's standard. The small printer, well, because it's quite old right now. So back then when there were no big printers, resin printers,
right,
in the consumer market at least.
And you have this, like you've got this like low classic traditional fantasy look to your stuff. I mean, everything, like it looks like illustrations I would see from fantasy novels and stuff, like like Magic the Gathering, Age of Sigmar, high fantasy stuff.
Yeah, that's a thing that also is fairly a focus. We are working with an illustrator from Poland called Saturday Arts, and she makes the concept art for the minis, and that's why it's probably keeping close to them allows for this fairly illustrative feel to them, at least to some extent, where it can be translated, right? The 2D stylized illustration into a mini that also works for a normal game. However, this also is a limitation because keeping close to the style, we can't, for example, make the typical D&D races that actually I think some people would enjoy to see, like Dragonborn or Thieflings.
Are there plans to? Oh, sorry, Kristen.
That's okay. I was just going to mention, I did see the Teeny clone imprint is on your printing catalog. Is that was that early on, or is that something newer, or what is that?
Yeah, Tiny Clone. That was the scanning
okay
endeavor I started with. Yeah,
I just saw that there was definitely like a broad range there. I saw a couple tiefling. I saw tiefling. I saw some historical mini stuff that looked very like accurate.
I think that was actually the scans. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a little bit of that looming in there. I saw there was a really cool, I think it was labeled as Lust Demon. People might recognize it from another movie franchise, maybe, possibly. I don't know. But it was really neat, and I actually bought it immediately.
No.
It was neat. So I was just kind of curious because, as Perrin was saying, are you planning to move out of that, or is it still, you're just going to be kind of in the chapters of this kind of low fantasy situation?
This really depends because we have a project running, building up to a project that's actually I'm legally required to say that co-funded by our government, Polish government.
Oh,
we managed to secure like a dotation for mainly a D&D module, but it's something focusing around themes that we are comfortable with in this geographical area, I will say.
Okay.
So making a little spoiler, if you like things like The Witcher, it could be something for you.
Oh, very cool. Is it going to be a Kickstarter, or is it too early to say?
It is most likely going to be a Kickstarter, so not to start another Patreon or something like that.
Okay. Obviously, you'll announce it to your patrons, though, so it might be another reason why people could like check out your Patreon to follow that news too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it gives credibility to the fact that we can actually deliver the files.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also noticed that you mentioned a D&D 5e RPG, and most of the most of the Patreons I see, they usually are like very catering to RPGers and very catering to the wargamers. And you all actually release like D&D stats for your characters and monsters and adventures, right?
Yeah, that's right. My friend who makes the stats actually kind of hates me because it's all the same for him the end, because he doesn't have much freedom in terms of making crazy D&D stuff. But yeah, we are doing that. So we are like in the middle ground, trying to do a little wargaming, especially with the customizers, and a little D&D. I mean, kind of works.
Oh, let's talk about those customizers. That's something that really sets your Patreon apart. Many of our listeners are probably familiar with like Hero Forge and stuff. So I was kind of surprised when I noticed that, like, it's like that, but with all your stuff. How did this happen?
Not really like that. But people often ask, how is this different from Hero Forge, and why are you even making this? I got frustrated with first, like, we decided to make a modular release because it was really requested by patrons, and we went all in with like 100 pieces or more. So I got frustrated with print tests. Really frustrated because having all the things in there and mirroring them correctly and seeing how they will look together, it was just a nightmare. So, the opportunity happened, and I made this up. And the main thing for me, at least in this, was to be able to configure a model and then export the pre-supported bits to print the model out in the end, and to do this for like a whole warband and have it ready through a weekend, and not really fuss about importing the correct parts, searching for them in Shitubox then, and mirroring them on one axis and the other. So yeah, that was the main goal in that, and it actually, I think people did enjoy it, so that's why we continued to make releases. But they are, as you may imagine, they are much more daunting to prepare than a normal month, because the process involved, there's much more.
To clarify, though, you're not only doing all the sculpting, you're also programming the app yourself as well?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And your doctor.
Dude, this is nuts.
Wow.
I was really
off to you.
Yeah, mad respect.
During my studies, I was really bored, so yeah, I picked up programming.
I mean, I have to kind of sympathize with that sentiment, because I get bored and I make whole websites to custom print spell cards, but like, this is a bridge too far even for me on this one. You're going nuts.
That's impressive.
It really is. Like, I thought for sure you contracted with like some web developer or small web developer team or something, or found like a cool thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really nice.
I mean, yeah, the basics are in a framework, because doing that from the start, it would be terrible. But I mean, the whole logic and all the other things are coded by me, so I don't take full credit for making 3D, for example.
Well, I do love it. I mean, and in fact, I'm working on a elf army project that's been about finished. And using your customizers, I've been using that to build up a whole bunch of models to add to that, specifically like the elf rangers and stuff. And so I very much appreciate it, because it lets me cycle through an entire bunch of options in a hurry and then just download just the files I need. I've very much enjoyed this addition to your library and roster. And
so Param, is that me friendly, or is it just like
it is super friendly? It is super friendly software. Yeah.
I am great. Not nearly so technical, so I often get intimidated. But if it's user friendly, that's exciting to me, because I don't have a lot of time to pick through that kind of stuff.
I don't think I could afford making something that was not user friendly, because then all the support tickets would overflow me in my mailbox forever.
That's amazing. We kind of jumped right into interviewing. Do we want to talk about current projects now, or since he's talking about it, or we want to come back to that later? Or
sure. What are you working on right now?
Of course, we have Patreon releases, so that's something that is the main focus. So for next month, we are basically finishing this month right now, so I'll probably talk about next month. That will have we had chapter 3. That was I think it was chapter 3. I'm getting lost in all this. But I think it was chapter 3 that we had some Dark Riders, and now we are making, like, also on Patreon request, a full bundle of those to have some more variety in the designs, and also make some of them that will be able to fly. Yet another flying beast that we had this month. We'll have another one in December. Yeah.
I had wondering when the rest of those crew would show up, because the big flying beast, like, I saw that, and that was impressive. I'm going to pull that up on screen, because that was just a crazy cool. Let's see if I can screenshot.
Is this from last month? Because that's going to pull it up 2 seconds.
This month, actually. I think like any person listening live today has time to jump in on this if they want for this month, right? Yeah.
Yes.
If you're listening live right now, hurry and click the button. Okay, you've got it in the background here. It is like you've got this gigantic flying wyvern. It's like tilted on. I like how you tilted it up on the wings, because sometimes when people do these gigantic dragons with giant wingspans, it's like, that's cool. I can't use it on my table, because the second it turns left, it's going to knock everything off.
Right.
Yes,
I
and
like that,
accessing
though.
minis under it was also a problem. So yeah, I do understand that. All credit goes to our amazing sculptor who is in charge of the monsters, Magda, and she concepted it this way, and yeah, it was really mind blowing. So yeah, that's the current project. However, we also have the second running project that is the Puzzles and Props, or Props and
yes.
Beyond brand. So this was the Kickstarter, and now we also have an MMF Tribes for the monthly bundles of props also.
Okay, so it's going to be continuing. I saw the Kickstarter and thought it was a really clever idea. I did not at first realize that it was the same, the same people doing the props. So what can people expect from a Puzzles and Props? Like, what is that for? Like, why would somebody want to utilize this for their games?
It started with accessibility of the printers again, because well, if you've probably encountered this situation that you really want to describe some kind of puzzle or artifact to your players, and you want them to be able to somehow crack it and access what's inside, for example, or some message. And you also probably know that it always goes the other way than you expected with players. So having something physical that can represent it is well, a neat trick that can not only make it possible to actually unlock some puzzle with lots of collaboration. Of course, the more people there are, the longer it takes to open the puzzle. That's how it goes. But also to engage less active players, for example, because they have some other way to enter the game with another sense, like touch and feel, while also it makes it easier to break the suspension of disbelief and to engage in the game a little more, because you have something that creates a buffer. So wearing a ring that you have in game makes it just a little bit more possible to be your character at the table. So yeah, that was one of the main reason here.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned that. I have players at my table who have aphantasia, and so they can't visualize like theater of the mind, and so just having that one little thing, and it's weird because even for role playing situations, if they have like a ring or like a scroll case or something, it's a way for them to connect very immersively, and I've noticed like a lot of them like the dice towers or the wands. I think you have some really cool wands on your prop stuff. I've seen that. They're really neat. So I think that's totally right on. Good way for them to engage, especially if they struggle with other ways to immerse like that. And I think it's very cool. It's not like as intense as like cosplay, but it is a very good touch point in kind of a nice crafting meetup spot for players and GM maybe. So.
Thank you for saying that. I wasn't aware that this actually helps people who have such problems. That's really important.
Absolutely, that's one of the reasons why I'm a big nut for 3D minis and printing as a whole, because I have players I didn't know for years that struggled, and finally we had some kind of sessions there that were very open dialogues, and it turned out that I had two different games with people with aphantasia and like I had no idea. So, and I've been gaming for 20 years almost, and here I was like doing theater of the mind and things like that, and I'd already kind of switched to 3D minis for other reasons, particularly for like tactical engagement reasons and rules. But yeah, to engage these people who were struggling, when we're using very elaborate language or whatever, and they were just saying nothing in their head, where something really cool like one of your wands or the rings or that witch figurine we talked about earlier, like that, just instantly they know what they're looking at, right?
Well, I totally didn't expect that, but if it helps, and you're very, I'm not sure if it's lucky, but you actually encountered two such people who were aware of the problem, unless you helped them diagnose it.
Right.
And one of the other things that with it's hard to always capture everybody's attention at the table, like you said, and I am a humongous fan of immersion, like as much immersion as you can manage in So much so that when I don't, I went and hand built a tavern in my backyard to run my games out of. So seeing cool props that I can and 3D print, and like this, like you've got one that you're showing off on your Kickstarter video, which is like a book with dials on the front that you have to actually physically move to open up the book, and that sort of thing is just wonderful. And it shows off the strength of 3D printing for games, because something like that would not make sense as a mass market product. And if it ever did make sense, then every player knowing would lose the wow puzzle factor, because everybody knows the book spinny puzzle thing, because everybody has it because it's at every game store.
But those actually lock, right? Like they actually like click open. And lock.
You can actually set up your combinations, so it's not that unreusable for the future stuff. But I think
I am floored. Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning to listeners, it's still late pledgeable, right? People can still pledge it on My Mini Factory, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only 65. Looks like for all in. Core bundle is 25. So yeah, if you want to get on, that's still there.
And you're making this into a monthly thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we made some. What was it? Kickstarter polls or whatever, and asking for emails for distribution, and plugged out also a question if people were interested in this. It turns out actually there was quite some interest in a monthly bundle of props. Mainly props, because puzzles require much more time and test printing. And even if the design doesn't take long, the test printing and tweaking everything to work will take a long time, and it can actually be longer than a month with some things. So it's risky to also supply puzzles as those things. But in the future, who knows?
So to clarify though, it's a different username and different name on My Mini Factory, right? It's Props and Beyond. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. I didn't want to confuse people that sought minis and found props.
So the props, is it also on Patreon separately as well, or is it?
Didn't start a Patreon because
okay.
Well, it was reasonable to go with MMF if people already got the Kickstarter things.
Right. So that is exclusive to Tribes, kind of then for the monthly. Okay. Yeah. Good for folks to know.
So it looks like some of our live audience appreciates that. David, which is one of our frequent commenters, is saying, "That's super awesome."
It is super awesome.
I like it. Yeah.
And finding out that Maksym's pretty much doing it all himself is even more awesome. Holy crap!
Like, of course, yeah. Physical engineering and puzzles and
for the props and beyond brand, I'm getting much more help than for
okay. So you're not like making those combination locks on top of your.
I made some of them, but not the majority of things. So yeah, that's
incredibly talented and modest. Got it.
Removing a kidney with one hand, custom sculpting a puzzle cube to send us all to hell in the other.
Right.
So can we go through the creative process? For those of you who are eager to listen to the projects we're working on this week, we usually open with that. We're in the middle of the interview. We'll get back to that right before the shout-outs. So do not worry. You'll get to see Christian's amazingly creepy undead monsters soon.
Well, but I also think we are so excited to talk to Maksym that we're just diving in. So yeah, sorry. I'd like to hear about his process too. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, how does this thing get made?
That's a tough one. I'd say actually that the process is different for each thing. I actually have a pipeline written out on diagrams to keep track of it. So I think that the most common thing would be a process for a mini, right?
Mm-hmm. We can do one specific, like this batch of Rangers. Yeah. How did they get made?
Well, they're actually something new I tested, so...
So they deviate. Got it.
Crap. I'm hoping next week we're going to find out that he's summoning dragons from the ether because he found some new amazing technology that makes that possible.
No. I mean, because of the fact that... also we got many requests that people would like to see more poses. Okay. So yeah, the approach was adjusted to that. But well, let's say that the first thing is the idea. So if we wanted to make rangers, right? So we have the general concept of what a ranger is. After some research and some searching here and there, and finding what appeals to the audience and to us mainly. Well, then there are the poses. So for poses, we actually sometimes take pictures of ourselves to make them as correct as possible. So I also, because of my background in historical reconstruction, like sword fighting, archery, and all that, I have a fairly good understanding of how the poses should work and what should happen in given situations, and how the balance, for example, works. That's something I see a lot in minis out there. That well, it shows when you know what a sword in the hand feels like, and actually having a proper sword fighting stance. So that's one thing. So yeah, after the pose idea, it's time for the modeling. If there is concept art, especially for the more important characters like heroes, there's the artwork that we'll keep fairly close to. Of course, it's a little bit stylized, like you can see in some of the sneak peeks for next months. But so that's why it needs to be translated into more minis with a little bit more detail, for example. So the sculpting is, as you'd expect, much work on the basic blockout first. So it's a more technical approach to make it all the basic silhouette work first, and then get into the details of everything. However, we're also trying to not overdo the details, because then it's actually only paintable with washes and dry brush, and that's not the way that many people would like to paint. So having details that are paintable in a reasonable way also is important. So you need to find the place where the details need to stop and give way to the general volume. Yeah, then there's print assessing for printability, and if everything is technically correct, if all is good, then it gets sent to our pre-support master, Haydash Workshop, who is the only person who does pre-supports for us, and from the beginning, for more than a year now, and he's getting really good reviews for the pre-supports. I mean, you've printed some of the things, so you possibly know how nice it is to just pull the supports off. Yeah, then there's rendering, and we're there. Yeah.
Just like that.
Just like that. Bingo, bango, bongo.
Sounds incredible. Wow.
Well, that is. I'm very glad you have a detailed process all mapped out. So you mentioned pre-supporting, and when I first got into the hobby, like a couple of years ago, like pre-supporting didn't exist, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. And do you think that that's like absolutely required right now for any figure artist to have pre-supported models?
Well, if you want to exist on the market, I think this is the way. Especially if you are intending to have a merchant license for your models, because, well, I used to print some stuff, like I said, commercially back in the times when there were no pre-supports for things, and it was a nightmare. I mean, I do hate pre-supports and the whole process. So yeah, maybe some people do enjoy it, like the person that we're working with, and he actually finds it soothing. I don't judge. I just can't understand.
I'm glad somebody likes doing it, because I don't.
I have to do my own supports a lot because I do a lot of kit bashing and stuff, but I don't enjoy it. Oh, I very much love it when I get to just like, ooh, it's the right scale and the right size. I'm just going to drag all this to my build plate and not worry about that.
Yes, that's something that we didn't have the luxury back in the day.
So you're bragging on your pre-supporter. So what makes a pre-supports good?
Well, first, reliability, and secondly, that they don't leave marks on the models after printing, because, well, there's no magic in having the model auto pre-supported with super heavy supports and then printed like without any problem. However, then when you remove them, the model is all either in ugly holes or has those stubs of pre-supports left. So, well, who wants that?
Right. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. So, so that's why you need a professional.
So, like, you mentioned specifically the merchant license. Like, so I'm guessing, like, your merchant customers. Like, for those of you who may be new to the hobby, a merchant license is somebody who has purchased the right to sell prints of the model from the artist. Because that's not something you can do just because you found a cool thing on the internet. You can't just print it and sell it off. You've got to have the legal rights for doing things like that. So why do the merchants want the pre-supports? You mentioned those specifically.
If you are a merchant for more than one creator and need to have it all in store and printable and have it all on demand, then having to pre-support everything by yourself would make it virtually impossible to run the business. I mean, if you are, at least when you're doing this yourself, everything. So it's a huge change for the printing business to be able to get ready to print files and not have to work on them at all yourself, basically.
So they can just set up their trays and go. So,
yeah, exactly. Huge change.
So why have merchant tiers and stuff? Like, why aren't you just like, shipping all that stuff yourself and printing all your orders?
I could answer that one for him.
I mean, right at this point, it wouldn't actually be impossible. However, looking at how the market looks, it's super competitive right now. And for example, I'm in Poland, so our market for minis isn't actually that big, and it's fairly saturated right now. While shipping to the biggest possible market, so the US, is absolutely not feasible because of shipping costs. So doing this myself would, well, obviously not be the logical step into all this.
Well, I know I do books, and I know sending books back to y'all is like, I spend sometimes 60, 70, 80 bucks for one book. So I can only imagine like a big army order.
Yeah.
I just sent a mini to some friends in Canada as just a present, and it cost me like $40 to send. Like, Ryan's Frog Kingdom cost me $40 to send him.
Yikes.
Yeah, and then if you need to cross the ocean, come on.
Oh no. No oceans. Yeah. I need to ship stuff where I can drive.
Well, and that distributed dealer is really cool too, because it's also going to increase delivery speed. So, like, Maksym can get the file out to his patrons that are merchant tier. It's going to suddenly be available. Somebody in, like, Chicago or even here in Utah is going to print that and ship it out to somebody, in Nevada way faster. So, like, makes a lot of sense, not just for Maksym to save the headache, but also just for the customer satisfaction loop. It's going to be faster, so I think it's really smart.
Yeah, however, I know there are services actually like appearing right now that offer a margin for organizing all this for you. So I think patrons like Printed Obsession are using those.
Yep.
So they have like a third party that does all the logistics and printing and logistics behind this, and just gives you a cut in this sale. So yeah, that's something for people to also look into if they are creating and wish to enter the physical market. However, well, the cuts to make it competitive with the usual sale price for minis would, I'm not sure if it would all add up in the end.
Well, it's like the reason like I'm so into 3D printing and this, like, I understand that there are fans out there who don't want to do the 3D printing themselves and stuff, and and that's the reason that the merchants exist, and I'm very happy that everybody gets to enjoy that relationship. But my favorite part is that you all release these cool twin elves with awesome swords, and 2 hours later I have them in my hand halfway across the world, and that's something that like is only possible because of what has happened the last couple of years. So what has been your view of like how this 3D printing market has blown up the last couple of years?
Well, we started with like just a few people doing this. Miguel Zavala, the main one.
Mhm.
And well, I think that it's a really good situation for us tabletop people to be able to just, especially with printer prices going down and down and quality going up. And with pre-support actually, so it's all much lower threshold of entry in the hobby that we can print, and even the small things like be able to reprint something and learn to paint, for example, because with store-bought minis you are kind of limiting yourself because of fear of breaking something and making it not work as you wanted it after you spent like $20 on it. So yeah, that's also a big thing, at least for me who cannot paint for anyway. What else I can say? I'd say that I'm not sure that printing will influence the physical mini market that much in the long run. I mean, we are seeing more people getting into printing, of course, but it's also, well, it is a messy hobby usually. And I mean, at least not until printers get super easy user experience like with 2D printer. I mean, I know that like Formlabs printers have it much simpler than usual resin printers. However, it's also, well, you can get resin spills and you get the smell and all that. So yeah, I think it's not that quick a process to. I mean, at least some people suggest that maybe possibly bigger brands of physical minis will eventually get into the STL market. Who knows? But
right now, like the only big brands I know of are Modifius. I guess Patent Forge and were a physical crew beforehand, and so was Heroes Infinite. They were a physical crew, but they were still pretty tiny. And then Modifius, I think, is maybe the biggest currently that has kind of jumped in the market.
I did see also Peterson Games just started selling some of their STLs for Cthulhu Wars. So,
how much is the Modifius in the general STL market? I mean, they have a few terrains for Fallout and Skyrim. I mean,
yeah, and a couple of Fallout figures, not much.
Which they probably wouldn't even wish to produce physically. So,
that's the thing.
I think that's mainly marketing stuff and not really intended for production.
Well, it's definitely nowhere near the quality and quantity that you see with the Patreons like yours.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, that has been a fairly wonderful bit of info from you, Max. Is there anything else that we want to make sure we talk about before our hour is up here?
Well, I think we covered most of it. I mean, making just shout outs to things that will happen and will be there, of course, if that will be possible. So
of course. Yes. I wanted to see if there was any big topics before we jumped into the what we're working on and what we're shouting out to section. Like it was like, oh no, you forgot completely that you need to do this with a printer.
Good.
I think we covered most of it, at least. in my 1 a.m. understanding of things right now.
Oh, we have to thank you so much for being awake right now. Like, I was totally willing to get up at 3 a.m. on a Sunday for this, and you were like,
No, come on.
I so much appreciate you being able to hop on when
Those
we
are
can do a live show.
still my working hours, so it's okay.
Oh,
Probably gonna
man
scalp
after my
something.
own heart.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Twin Elves, Param, because actually that was the thing that got me, and I have in fact become a patron during this broadcast. So.
Yes, I love this. No, like, also, like, I'm noticing, like, even with your stuff, specifically your skill, your stuff was already on the good side of the market, and I'm not gonna like bash on any particular creators, but like, there's this line when I say, oh, that's a good 3D print, I want to give them money, and your stuff was already above the line, but your stuff has gotten better and better and better every single month, like to the point that these rangers are just like so crisp.
Yeah.
That's really important for me that there's progress, actually, because I actually see that myself. That there was some moment of stagnation in like between months 3 and possibly 6 and that, but then things started to get a little bit better, and slowly. Yeah, thank you so much for pointing this out and actually noticing this. This is like super important for me. And of course, Chris, thank you for joining.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
I
thank you
I
for
see
winning
that.
me over. You are both fascinating to talk to, and as I dug more into the newer files, I can totally agree that the quality of the sculpts is definitely even. It was already good, but it's just getting better and better. So.
Thanks a lot.
I like the new ponies, the halfling ponies, because they look like ponies instead of just tiny horses. Okay, so before we get into the shout outs, let's talk about what we're working on this week. What's our projects? What is coming out of our printers? I've literally have both of my printers burning it up right now. So Christian, what's coming out of your printers lately?
Right now, I did the Beastarium Scragoth Raptors, is what they're called. I don't know that they were intended to be presented as undead, but man, they screamed undead to me.
Those are creepy! For those of you who are not seeing that, it's this pink and yellow monstrosity with claws and made of nightmares.
Yeah, I tried to make it look like it had been flayed and like it had bone armor growing out of it. I mean, the Beastarium minis are already just kind of like crazy Dark Souls horror vibe, and they just were so nice to just pull it out. But if they're horrifying to you, I also did something a little more chill. I also finished off some treants from Drunken Dwarf, and I believe one. I think it's from not Print Your Monsters. It's from Cast and Play. You're right. It is we call him Beaky because he is a treant that has like he's leaning more like bestial and he has like a beak on him. He has a little cute mushroom on his back too, which is adorable. But Vanessa, my friend, actually helped me finish off my paints with him. She did a lot of my dry brushing at the end, so we kind of did a collaboration on Thanksgiving, like when we were waiting for food. So it was fun.
They all look really good. I'm seeing cool dry brushing. Is this some? I know for a fact that on the undead you had to use some not contrast paint because you went out in the middle of painting these right before the game session to get some Ubshanti bone.
I did. So yeah, it was again, I'm a big fan of doing the double zenithal where I did red to get the kind of base bloody flayed tone, and then I did like just a brush of white on them, and then contoured underneath to get that kind of flayed grossness, and then dry brushed in some bone areas. Then I went back and did a little bit of washes on the bones to do some shadows in the ridges and stuff. It still needs, I think, more work, but I'm always going to say something's not done because that's just who I am. So.
Life of a perfection.
Yes.
I had fun with the airbrush with this last project. So I'm finishing up my army, my elf army project. I have a couple more to paint. and I have a bunch more that I have to paint for the Elven Rangers, the Glade Stalkers. I play Kings of War, and so the Elven Glade Stalkers. So I need me some Elfie Rangers, and for those I'm using Max's Elven set from chapter, I forget what chapter, but
I think that's 5.
5.
Yeah.
I'm using the customizer. They look good, and so I'm using those to make my Glade Stalkers. But I need my Elven King, so I have this from the Last Sword miniatures. They did this really great Elven hero on horse, and I'm going to pull it up on screen where you can see I got the dry brush out, and it was just freezing cold, and I already ruined 2 minis trying to prime outside. So when I ruin a mini, that's when I know it's time to go back inside where it's warm and use the dry brush. So this is my first time I ever primed with a dry brush, and I was so worried I was going to clog that thing up. So I did the dry brush black.
You're saying dry brush. Do you mean airbrush?
Sorry, airbrush. Yeah.
Okay.
I primed with an airbrush. You can totally prime with a dry brush. I saw, I forget the name. Goobs was talking about it when they were talking about dry brushing lately. But,
right.
Who's the dude that does all the dry brushing videos? Whoever. Anyway, instead of me stumbling around, so I pulled out the airbrush, not the dry brush, and some Stynal Res Black, because that's what I'm contractually obligated to use according to all YouTube miniature painters. And I got that on there, and then I came in with Pro Acryle's white, titanium white. Instead, was using ink, but I'm swearing off ink after this. This is the best way to prime white. It goes on just as smooth as the ink does, and it's acrylic, so it's just as strong as your normal acrylic layer. So you don't have to do that recommendation where if you use the inks, it's kind of fragile. So like you say, and then wait a day. And I'm like, I don't have a day to wait. I printed this morning. I need to use it tonight, and I need it painted now. So the Pro Acryl white just comes out so buttery smooth and so bright, and I've got a picture of it up on screen. And then just from there, I got on the Countercharge, who's a Kings of War podcast, Countercharge. They run a Discord called Countercharge After Dark, which is just a Discord to go hang out in when you're painting minis. And then, and I've lost the link to it. Oh, there it is. And then I just pulled it up and just sit there for 4 hours, just chilling, chatting, and painting this king for all he was worth. And I got like so many layers of cloth and folded down there. And I was like, and I'm going to paint this horse butt the best I've ever painted a horse's butt before. And I was so proud of it when I was done with it.
Hopefully you're not offended, Maksym, by horse butt.
No,
Max,
I mean, I sculpted horse butts. So.
Yeah, Max has sculpted some of the best horse butts I've ever printed. I'm using one of your horses. I'm going to hold it up the screen right now. I'm using one of your horses right now that I've kit bashed
that camera.
a not techless onto to be my archmage for my army.
Nice.
Yeah,
cool.
Max sculpts good horse butt.
I'll put that on my resume.
Doctor and sculpts horse butt.
But soon it's going to be a puzzle horse butt that you turn the tail the right way and a wand sticks out.
All right.
What an idea.
This is family friendly, Param. Come on.
All right, so Max, what are you working on right now? Like, what's popping out of your printer? Is it more test prints?
I mean, from my printer is right now popping mostly fails because it got really cold out here. And my printer is in the garage, so yeah, now is the time of print failures and waiting it for heating up for like 2 hours before it can be used. So yeah, not much of you actually use, but you know, of course, test prints for future releases.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that they come out not failing soon. And it's time to shout out to cool things. So, Max, where can we find your projects? What cool things do you want to shout out to?
Okay, so, of course, you can find me on Patreon. So, the printing goes ever on. Which you can also find on MMF Tribes under the same name. You can also, of course, find the previous releases and models there. Also on my website. Also, the printing goes on. If you Google it, you will find it. Also, of course, they Props and Beyond brand for the puzzles and props things, if you are into that. So this is also on MMF mainly to be found. So my factory, where you can grab. Well, actually, I think now you can't grab the November bundle.
Oh no!
Yeah, I think it can be too late, but we've got some cool stuff for December that's basically ready to be published tomorrow or today. So, could be worth it. Worth checking out.
If you join in December, you get a discount code for previous releases.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, that's the first release we had in November, so that's true. For that, we'll need to have the code. Damn. There's so many things to organize.
Oh no. I'm sure you can handle it. You've got 7 hands.
I wish I could clone myself. That would be super helpful. Oh,
Shift D in Blender.
Not too many clones though. With your skill set, we would be in trouble. You would take over everything.
I don't know. I'd like to limit myself to what I do, at least for now, and to be able to control it properly.
Awesome. Christian, any shoutouts from you?
Just a couple quick things. I wanted to thank those Patreons that are not doing completely holiday sets. Specifically though, if you're gonna do one, Epic did theirs, but it's free. It's an additional set, so I think that was really worth calling out. Crippled God hid a secret goblin set inside their holiday set, so it's not just a holiday set. So those are worthwhile. And then a lot of just general winter ones. I'm not gonna necessarily go through that list because it's really big. But also just Patreons that do annual enrollments, like yours, Maksym. Printing Everon has annual enrollments, which I adore because you can save up and just do one purchase and then have it coming in without having to worry about getting dinged every month. And the discount, yours is 18%, which is fantastic. So thank you.
So it's 2 months, in. So thank you so much for trusting me for a year.
Those were really good twin L's. What can I say?
And
that's me.
I need to shout out to my other podcast right now, No Direction, because tomorrow live we're going to have Eric Mona on to talk about Absalom, City of Lost Omens, the book we still aren't. Okay, I have it. They sent me a press copy. I've read it, and I'm still not sure it really exists. This thing has been delayed that many times. So find out if this book is
for first edition. I think, right? I was expecting.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the first holiday window for second edition's launch.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is a book that has been epically delayed again and again and again and again, and it's I have it, I've read it, and I still don't believe it exists. Find out if it's real tomorrow on No Direction. All right. And that brings us to close. If you wish to further follow the podcast, you can do so over at printyourgames.com. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Do give us a good rating at your favorite podcast website. A 5-star rating on iTunes would really help us out right about now if you are enjoying things. Also give us a thumbs up if you're watching us up on the YouTubes or wherever you found it. Also, comments or questions are wonderful. You can email us at podcast@printyourgames.com, and you can find us over at Print Your Games on Twitter and the newly released Print Your Games Facebook page, which existed all of as of 4 hours ago. And I'm still getting some of that stuff set up, but hey, it's over there. We do want to thank everyone who has been sending us notes and feedback and cheers and fan mail. It has been wonderful. These past 4 episodes have been very well received. And of course, thank you to Maksym for being our first guest. Thank you, Maksym.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Wonderful having you on here. Go check out Maksym's stuff and go check out our stuff. We will see you all next week on Print Your Games.